This tune is one of the most recognisable tunes on the planet, but what song is actually playing? Is it God Save the King, Helderium Siegerkranz, the Anthem of Liechtenstein, or is it My Country 'Tis of Thee? Or is it any one of another dozen tunes written to the exact same music? Well, yes, it's all of them and more. And this is what makes it so interesting. Today, we are going to talk about the history of the tune that is the most commonly known as the anthem God Save the King. Welcome back to 5 Minute History, the weekly series where patrons and members choose the topic. This week, we're talking about the history of the tune that provides the backing to God Save the King, courtesy of Aussie. Make sure you remember to like, comment, hype the video, and subscribe for more. To cut a long story short, we have no idea where this tune actually comes from. Several composers have been proposed as the author, but no definitive attribution has ever been established with full certainty. Among the earliest candidates are English composers such as John Bull, who lived from 1562 to 1628, and he served the crown and the court of Elizabeth I. A manuscript piece written by Bull around 1619 and sometimes titled God Save the King bears marginal resemblance to the anthem's melody, but scholars debate often how closely it actually matches what we know today. If Bull was the originator of the tune, then the melody predates the anthem's widespread public use by more than a century, but we can't actually prove it because, again, it's quite different. Another early attribution is Henry Purcell, who lived from 1659, who served at the court of King James II, and he made music with vaguely similar melodies. Some researchers have proposed Welsh composer John Hughes, or even some other anonymous composers working for the Catholic Stuart court. The melody may have roots even deeper in history, with some arguing it derives from plainchant or Renaissance dance forms. No matter who wrote it, we know it was in circulation in various forms well before the 18th century, and this kind of suggests that it evolved gradually and most likely was a cover of a cover of a cover, rather than just springing to life as a composed anthem. The anthem that we recognise today, though, is the one with the familiar opening verse beginning God Save Our Gracious King. Well, it first emerged and gained some popularity in 1745 when Prince Charles Edward Stuart, known then as Bonnie Prince Charlie, led a Jacobite rising in Scotland and marched south into England, threatening to overturn the Hanoverian monarchy and restore the Catholic Stuart line to the throne. It was in this situation where we first hear God Save the King, because it was performed publicly for the first time in its recognisable form at Drury Lane Theatre in September 1945 in London. The performance was essentially a nice feel-good propagandary meeting among the audience to get some support for George II, and it apparently went over well with people there who heard it, and the song began to grow in popularity. The text sung in 1745 included verses and lines that have fallen from use in the modern era, such as the more famous rebellious Scots to crush. And these days, other regions of the United Kingdom, such as Wales and Scotland, do have issues with it, and so they actually have their own anthems that are used for sporting events to represent them. This here is the Scottish one. And this is, I should point out, these are some of the most moving and amazing songs ever written, to no detriment of God Save the King, but holy lord does Flower of Scotland make hairs stand up, and the Welsh anthem, whose name I can't pronounce properly, it just makes you want to cry, it's so good. But anyway, the title of God Save the King has naturally alternated across the centuries depending on whose butt sits on the throne. During the reign of Queen Victoria, it was universally known as God Save the Queen, and then it jumped back to God Save the King, and then during the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, it was God Save the Queen again. With Charles III on the throne, the anthem has now reverted back to God Save the King, and it will remain that way for the indefinite future as both the heir to the throne and his heir are both male. The text itself has been revised and adapted across different reigns, with monarchs and their governments occasionally commissioning new verses to reflect contemporary events. During times of war, there are additional patriotic verses added and removed for specific performances. However, the first verse has remained essentially unchanged since its introduction, and it's become synonymous with British sporting teams, or more specifically English teams, although there is a push right now to replace it with the song Jerusalem for England-only teams. An example of the song changing, for example, for events would be the special Wilcox arrangement for the wedding of Princess Diana and Prince Charles, well, then Prince Charles. Arguably, this is the greatest version of the song to ever exist, and again, hair standing up kind of recording with the choir. The wildest aspect of God Save the King, though, is how much it has caught on and travelled around the world. For example, in the 18th and 19th centuries, at the height of British cultural and imperial influence, the tune was taken and adapted by multiple countries for different purposes. It's not unique to God Save the King. This happened with Deutschlandlied, for example, which is the same tune as the old Austrian anthem Gott erhalte Franz den Kaiser. Famously, the anthem has actually provided the melody for My Country 'Tis of Thee, which was adopted in the United States in the early 19th century with an entirely different set of lyrics. And for a while, it was a serious contender to be the anthem of the United States, which, mind you, the United States actually didn't have an anthem until relatively recently. And yes, there's a particular irony in Americans singing a patriotic tune with the exact same backing music as the British royal anthem. Similarly, today, God Save the King actually also remains the royal anthem and the co-national anthem of countries such as Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, even though they have their own anthems. For example, Advance Australia Fair, O Canada, and God Defend New Zealand. God Save the King is still there. For the German perspective, they had Heil dir im Siegerkranz, which was used during the German Empire, and it actually had the same melody as God Save the King, although it was slightly changed as time went on. Plenty of other national anthems have done this as well. For example, the tune is used today in Liechtenstein as well as its national anthem. And during this time period, at the height of British imperial power in the 19th century, the tune was serving as the national anthem for more than 15 different states simultaneously. It was only during the Victorian era that the anthem's status became formally established in British public life, because it began to be played more at official ceremonies, royal occasions, and public gatherings. It was actually during this era too that the practice of standing when it was performed became firmly entrenched as a mark of respect to the sovereign, and also the country, which, has travelled on to other national anthems around the world. Along with this introduction into public life, specific arrangements were introduced for specifically military bands, orchestras, and church organs during this period to standardise the melody and reduce any variations, making it accessible for the average person no matter where they were in the empire. In short, it's an interesting tune. It's really fun to sneak into a video on Imperial Germany purely for the comment from someone going, "Hang on, why are you playing the British anthem?" I do it every time, without fail. It's amazing. And it's quite interesting, even if we don't really know where it came from. Thank you to Aussie for suggesting this topic, and shout out to all my members and patrons. Like, comment, subscribe, hype the video, and I'll catch you all next time.